Sudan is on the brink of mass famine and widespread food insecurity. There's also a genocide happening, mostly overlooked by the world.
Famine is looming in Sudan as the civil war between the army and the paramilitary rapid support forces continue.
8.6 million people have been displaced. Over 16,000 people have died.
A fierce battle across Sudan. The army and the powerful paramilitary group, the Rapid Support Forces, have been in conflict for more than a year.
This is the story of a fierce power struggle between two rival generals that plunged the region into chaos in April 2023.
Somewhere in the region of around 222,000 children could die from malnutrition.
This is Sudan Explained. In 2018, Sudan was in a severe economic crisis. The government's decision to triple the price of bread ignited mass protests that quickly turned into calls for President Omar al-Bashir's resignation. The demonstrations spread nationwide, uniting diverse groups against the regime. Initially, the Sudanese Armed Forces led by General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan supported Bashir, but as the unrest grew, they began to sympathize with the protesters. Recognizing Bashir's unattainable position, the Sudanese Armed Forces, or the SAF, leaders distanced themselves from his regime. The Rapid Support Forces, a paramilitary group established by Bashir in 2013, led by General Mohamed Hamdan Dagalo, commonly known as Hemedti, supported Bashir and violently suppressed protests. However, as the protests intensified, Hemedti shifted allegiance to preserve his power, aligning with the protesters against Bashir.
The Khartoum sit-in, a centre of pro-democracy protests for the last 2 months, was engulfed in a hail of gunfire.
On April 6, 2019, thousands of protesters began a sit-in outside the military headquarters in Khartoum, demanding Bashir's resignation. Despite attempts to disperse them, they remained resolute. On April 11, 2019, the SAF, with RSF support, detained Bashir, marking the end of his 30-year rule.
President Omar al-Bashir has been ousted and arrested.
Following Bashir's ousting, Sudan was governed by a transitional military council headed by General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan and Hemedti.
Tension between the military and civilian sides of the administration remains at an all-time high.
Initially cooperative, the alliance masked underlying tensions. Hemedti, leading the RSF, had significant economic power through control of gold mining operations in Darfur. The Transitional Military Council proposed folding the RSF into the SAF as part of the December 2022 framework agreement to unify the country's military structure. This initiative was strongly pushed by Sudan's civilian government and pro-democracy groups as a crucial step towards reducing the militarization of politics and ensuring a stable transition to civilian rule. General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan of the SAF supported the integration in principle but favored a gradual process. In contrast, General Hemedti of the RSF strongly resisted the plan, arguing that a rapid merger would destabilize his forces. Both military leaders were concerned that the integration would diminish their respective powers. Unwilling to relinquish control, Hemedti feared losing his economic power and facing potential future prosecution for his role in past human rights abuses and war crimes. Anticipating the potential threat, Hemedti began bolstering the RSF's presence in strategic areas, particularly in and around Khartoum.
Two army generals who came to power in a 2019 coup and shared it for 4 years decided to oust one another.
He brought in thousands of new conscripts to strengthen his forces. This maneuver was a clear sign of his intent to maintain control and resist any attempts to dilute his authority over the RSF. The situation escalated when Hemedti decided to make a bold move to assert his dominance. He dispatched 2,000 RSF troops to al-Burhan's personal residence, a military compound in Khartoum. This action triggered a fierce shootout in which 35 guards were killed. Al-Burhan narrowly escaped the assassination attempt. The attack marked the beginning of an intense and widespread conflict between the SAF and the RSF. This sudden escalation plunged Sudan into chaos, with heavy fighting breaking out in Khartoum and quickly spreading across the country. The conflict underscored the deep divisions and rivalries that had been simmering beneath the surface, turning the power struggle between Al-Burhan and Hemedti into a full-blown civil war. Currently, the war continues to rage on with no end in sight.
The World Food Program now says what began as a power struggle could become the world's largest hunger crisis.
Over 8 million people have been newly displaced within and outside the country. The World Food Programme's head has warned that the war could lead to the largest hunger crisis globally. However, the UN's humanitarian response plan for Sudan is currently only 4% funded. If you want to donate to the World Food Programme, there's a link in the description below.